Hello, guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing another episode of our Planet 2 mod spotlights, where we take a look at some of the wonderful mods people have been making and use them to talk about some of the wonderful biodiversity that we share our world with. So today, we've got quite an interesting assortment of animals today. We've got fish, a couple subspecies of zebra, a couple extinct animals. I think actually just one. But yeah, we've got a cool assortment today, so let's get started. So we're going to be starting off today with the fish, like we typically have to do it, or typically like to do it. We've got Jay Quadix, who's given us the humpback largemouth bream. So really cool species here. Let's see if we can spot them. We'll actually just look at that one down there, because I like to see them swim in all proper. So this is the humpback largemouth, or Serranochromis altus. So these guys are a type of cichlid, so they're quite a big type of cichlid, and they specialize in eating other fish too. So in terms of their environment, these guys tend to live in deeper water, or the dismal water, live in tropical areas and in freshwater. In terms of where they're found, in Africa they can be found in the upper Zambezi River, Zambia and Okavango Delta, and in drainages in Botswana and Namibia. And also they're reported from the Zambezi and Okavango Delta in Angola. So they are found in kind of western and central Africa. So general, the kind of length of they reach maturity is about 28 to 32 centimeters, or average about a foot, about 30 centimeters. And even at their max length, they can get about 56 centimeters in length. And their maximum published weight is about 3.9 kilograms. And they have a pretty typical body shape for a fish. They have a body shape that's fusiform, or considered pretty basic to normal fish. It's not like an anguilliform, which is either eel-like, or a sturgiform, which is like tuna or shark-like. So they've kind of got like a pretty basic body plan in terms of fish as well. So these guys are a predatory species. They tend to be mostly active during the twilight and at night. They feed primarily on nocturnal mammalids and shibbolid fishes, so they do eat other species of fish. And they typically breed at the beginning of summer. So they're a really cool species. They are considered least concerned, so they're doing quite well. And, you know, they're considered harmless as well. We'll have a look at the Zoopedia, because there's not that much information actually on the species. So yeah, really cool species. So they were described as a new species fairly recently, in the early 90s, where their habits in the wild are still rather mysterious and unknown. In spite of the lack of general information on their behavior, humpback largemouths are still fairly popular as game fish within their native regions. Members of the genus Serranochromis hardly ever exported for use in aquaria, with a few species native to Lake Malawi being the most prominent. Keeping humpback largemouths in aquariums isn't entirely unheard of, though, despite the difficulty of acquiring a live and healthy individual. So yeah, they're quite hard to find in captivity. For years, the humpback largemouth was considered synonymous with the speckle-faced bream, which is far more common in aquaria, and the two species are primarily distinguished by differences in habitat and diet. And these guys are crepuscular, meaning that they're mostly active at dusk and dawn, and they're also piscivores, which means they specialize hunting other fish. And you can mention that over here, that they're really cool. You can see they're fish carnivorous, and they kind of fill the ecological role of a bass, so they're quite similar in that regard to a bass. So yeah, another really cool Jay Quadix fish. You know, I always love a good Jay Quadix fish. Quite a lot of African fishes as well. You know, it's quite cool to see some coming from Africa. But yeah, really cool. Anyway, we got another one by Lorby. You know, we do love a Lorby mob. Next one, we've got the African black duck. So another African one today. We do have a lot of African mods today, surprisingly. Okay, so we've got the African black duck, or Anas sparsa, which is a species of duck in the genus Anas, which is genetically closer, so it's the same genus as the mallards. But does show some peculiarities in its behavior and its plumage, and is also placed in the subgenus Melananus, which is quite funny as well. So the African black duck is a black duck with pronounced white marks on its back, a dark bill, and orange legs and feet. It also has a purplish blue speculum, which you can kind of see under its wings there. That's where it is. That is often visible, especially when in flight. They're also known as the black river duck, or the West African black duck, or Ethiopian black duck. And there's also two different subspecies. Anonymous subspecies is the South African black duck, and Leucostigma is the pink-billed black duck. So it's a medium-sized duck. So they reach between 48 and 57 centimeters, or about 19 to 22 inches, in length. And the males are typically larger than females. So the African black duck is mainly found on the eastern and southern sub-Saharan Africa, from South Africa north to South Sudan and Ethiopia, with outlying populations in the western equatorial Africa and southwest Nigeria, Cameroon, and Gabon. So in terms of its behavior, they are a very shy but territorial duck. They are usually seen in pairs or in small flocks. It breeds throughout the year and in different areas. So now we'll have a look at the cute little babies, because how can you not look at the cute little babies? So incubation for the species takes about 30 days, and it's done by the mother, and the fledging period is about 86 days, and only the mother will take care of young. Their egg quantity ranges from 4 to 8 eggs. So in terms of their ecology, they do like to stay in rivers and streams during the day. It prefers large open waters during the night. This duck likes water in the wooded hills of Africa and hides its nest near running water. Although the African black duck makes a cup-shaped nest of driftwood and matted grass as well. And though it builds its nest near water, it's almost always above flood level of the ground, so they make sure that the eggs don't get drowned as well. So in most regards, the same male, female, pretty much the same colours and everything. But in terms of diet, not too dissimilar from most other species. It is an omnivore and mainly feeds off the larvae and pupae usually found under rocks, but also aquatic animals, plant material, seeds, small fish, snails, and crabs. So pretty similar diet to most other duck species. So we'll have a quick look at the Zoopedia as well. The carnivore, we mentioned all of this as well. Research that is famously shy. Males and females share the same malted brown pattern, making them tell apart. Unlike many ducks, they thrive in fast-flowing rivers and can navigate rapids with impressive control, like a Theo or blue duck. These ducks are generally quiet, communicating with soft whistles and low calls instead of loud quacking. Breeding pairs aggressively defend their stretch of river and chase off other ducks, even larger species. So that's quite cool. So that kind of tells you a little bit of information about them. So yeah. Really, really cool animal here. I'd love to see a black duck. So Lorby, is doing a lot of ducks recently. Done a lot of the scoters and stuff. So it's cool to see some more African animals as well coming around. Definitely quite happy with that. So next up, we've got a couple mods done by Sky Polaris. So let's have a look at those mods done by Sky Polaris. So here we have got the Crawley's zebra. So this is Equus quagga crochet. So these guys are a subspecies of the plain zebra, so Equus quagga. They are native to eastern Zambia, east of the Luangwa River, Malawi, and southeastern Tanzania, and northern Mozambique, south of the Gorongosa district. So they're not too different. They're a subspecies, so they're not a distinct species. They're not that different from the plain zebra, but you can tell them apart from other subspecies or other populations of zebra due to their lower incisors, lack of an fundibuculum, but also they've got very narrow stripes, as you can see here, compared to other species or other forms of the plain zebra. So that's kind of the main way you can tell them apart. So have a look at here as well. So yeah, they are distinctive subspecies of plain zebra found in the Melbourne woodlands and the grasslands of Zambia. It is known for its exceedingly narrow, closely shaded stripes. Look at the elephant with little or no shadow stripes between them. The stripes extend all the way down the legs and the hooves and are particularly fine on the face and neck. This gives the zebra dark overall appearance. Many other subspecies are slightly smaller in stature than the plain species or subplain zebras, but are similarly robust in build. So these are adapted for seasonal mobile woodland ecosystems, which have a pronounced dry season, unlike the migratory zebras of each Africa. Crochet zebras typically make localized seasonal migrations to water and grazing, often congregating in river areas like the Luangwa and Zambezi River during dry months. As a bulk grazer, feeding primarily cut grasses and stuff. And yes, face all the same threats that most zebras face: habitat loss due to agricultural expansion, competition with domestic livestock, and illegal hunting for meat. But there's populations largely confirmed to the South Luangwa National Park in Zambia, And conservation efforts have been focusing on these key habitats by maintaining wildlife corridors between them to ensure genetic diversity. And the subspecies was named after John Crawshay, who was a 19th century British explorer and naturalist who collected specimens from this region. So let's have a look here. Most of the paint. Yeah, those are all covered kind of there. But yeah, really, really cool. And we have a look at the foal. Because, you know, the foal is always very, very cute. So we have a look at these guys. They're very, very cute. Alright, we're going to be moving on. Next up, we have got the Selous zebra. They're also done by Skypolaris, another subspecies. So this one here is Equus-Cuga selosi, Selous zebra. These are a subspecies of plain zebra distributed across southeastern Africa and are found mostly in Mozambique. So this is a subspecies actually quite similar to the Burchell's zebra, but it can be distinguished by its legs, which are actually striped to the hoof, so the stripes go right down to the hoof. In terms of description, these subspecies have clear black and white banding without the brown shadow stripes of the Chapman zebra. So you can see they don't have those kind of brown stripes there. They also extend downwards to the flanks and over the whole body except the flanks, face and neck. The upper half of the body is covered in horizontal stripes, mostly faded, that do not go around the legs. The belly is also partly striped, as you can see there, down there. And the average mass for this subspecies is about 300 kilograms, or about 660 pounds, and have an average height of about 59 inches. So not too dissimilar. Let's have a look at the Zoopedia here. Distinctive plain zebra, there's a name here, more Mozambique, so that's kind of where they're found. It features prominent shadow stripes, faint brownish stripes, or black and white bands of robust belts. You can see those kind of short ones there. Unlike migratory zebras, it undertakes only local seasonal migrations and is threatened by the same things that threatens all the other populations of zebras. So it was named after the famous British explorer and conservationist Frederick Selous. They are resident grazers, not long-distance migrants, adapted for the seasonal and mealbit environment. And the rest are kind of, the same as the normal zebra. But yeah, really, really cool. Like this. Oh, no, don't want that. So we'll have a look at this guy. Really, really cool. And we've got to have a look at the foal. How do you not have a look at the foal? Very, very cute. Anyway, next up, we have got another Great Cakes mod. How can you not love a Great Cakes mod? This is an extinct animal. So this is called Tawu lili. I believe how you say that, and this is a really cool mod. So, Tawu is an extinct genus of Macarodonts. So this is the group that includes, Homotherium, Macarodus, and of course Smilodon. It lived during the early Pleistocene of about 2.5 million years ago in East Asia. So far, it's only known from one skull, and is known from northern China. But based on this, it's a relatively small representative of the saber-toothed cats have been reconstructed. So this guy is a lot smaller than, the big macarodes, like Smilodon and stuff. They're all quite large animals. These guys are only about the same size as a modern-day leopard, which is still huge, but, compare it to its relatives, it's definitely a bit smaller. In its dental characteristics, it mediates between phylogenetic older forms, such as Amphimacarodus, and younger members like Homotherium. So yeah, the genus itself was actually scientifically described in 2022, but the material was actually found in the 1930s, so it was nearly 100 years before this actual species got described. So that puts it in perspective, doesn't it? So as I mentioned, this is only named from the skull, so the rest of its body is pretty, guesswork. So we'll talk about that. It's a fairly small representative, about the size of a leopard. Found so far is a nearly complete skull that's about 23.5 centimeters in length and about 13.4 centimeters in width. And it has a lot of traits, such as the zygomatic arch being more similar and slender and narrow than things like Homotherium and Xenophilus. But it does have other traits, such as the incisor row being more prominent than in things like Amphimacarodus. So there's lots of traits that are kind of in between a lot of those later Macarodonts like Homotherium and Xenosmilus, and earlier ones Amphimacarodus and Locogeraris. So that's kind of those ones. There's a lot of characteristics there. But as I sort of mentioned as well, it's only found one specimen. The only fossil find of this Tawu is found, comes from the Fakun, which is a place, locality about 36 kilometers east of the township in Taug, which is part of the city of the Zhejiang province in the Zhejiang province. The site and other areas in the region were excavated as early as the 1930s by American paleontologist Childs Frick, and the various localities had numerous fossil materials, such as several carnivorans, such as Homotherium, which is we mentioned before. Homotherium, extinct form of the lynx, as well as badgers. Xenoscion, which was a member of the dogs, and then, of course, the hyena Pachycocata, and also early relatives of the modern horse. And additionally, the latter was mentioned to apply the predominant position of the Pleistocene. So, in terms of where this guy fits in the family tree, so Tawoo is a genus of the extinct family of Macharodid, which is a member of the family of the cats. So, based on genetics, it seems that the Macharodonts was another group that split off from the both the large cats, the panthers, and the small cats. All your little kitty cats, things like that. They would have split off about 20 million years ago in the early Miocene, and they developed these large sabers, which gave them their name. But there is even some difference within the group of Macharodonts. There are some with more kind of saber-like canines, with Smilodontids having, like the Macharodonts have more saber-like canines like these guys. The Smilodontidae have more dagger-like canines, so that includes Smilodon and those animals. And then the Metalluridae had less kind of large canines, so that includes its relatives like one really cool animal like Yoshi or Promeganterion. They were all more kind of their own sort of group of smaller canines. And like this, since they have like a leopard kind of like body size, they actually represent one of the smallest members of the group from the Pliocene and Pleistocene. But it's a dentition that suggests that it's somewhat intermediate between earlier, more basal specimens such as Apimacharodus and later forms such as Homotherium within the Macharodontidae. And this is recognizable, for example, from the third premolars, which is only slightly reduced in size. But on the other hand, the interior shifted in sizes also suggests certain more kind of modern characteristics. So it's kind of an in-between. It's an intermediate. The skull underlying the genus, as I mentioned, was found in the 1930s. But then it was originally thought to belong to Macharodus, but a study in 2022 necessitated a re-evaluation and kind of actually described this as its own distinct genus of saber-toothed cat. And the generic name comes from the creature Tawoo, which is in Chinese mythology, and its striking characteristics include powerful tusks, which is very similar to the teeth of the saber-toothed cat, so it fits. And the scientific name Lilai comes from the epithet to honor the Chinese scientist Li Juni. I'll say that. I don't know. I'm not even sure. I can't even pronounce half these correctly. But this person made very significant impacts and contributions to the study of Pleistocene East Asian carnivores. So it's cool that their name is honored. So in terms of their phylogeny, they have a very interesting phylogeny. They are kind of more early / kind of early members. They're before the split of the Homotherium and Xenosmilus and those guys. They're a little bit basal to the tree. There's still a Macharodontidae, which includes things like Apimacharodus and Locrogularis and Macharodus and stuff like that. So they are a very interesting animal. They're a little bit more on the path to becoming something more like Homotherium, but still have some basal traits too. But I have to say, this is a very, very cool one. Definitely a big fan of this one. I love how Great Cakes makes a lot of those really awesome mods that are like prehistoric animals, but they don't just shrink wrap them and really just either copy paste them as modern animals. Great Cakes really tries to make them distinct and interesting, so I'm very happy with that. And we've got to have a look at the cubs. Is there a cub still running around? We've got to have a look at the cub. It's very, very cute. I really love the patterns and stuff and everything on this. It's a really great representative of this animal, I've got to say. And, Great Cakes typically knocks it out of the park with all these animals. But yeah, ready to carry on next. We're going to do another Great Cakes mod, but we got one in the middle first. Next up, we're going back to the modern day, and we've got a really cool species, the crab-eating fox. So let's have a look at the crab-eating fox by Moonfox. That's a model we haven't seen in a good while, but it's really cool to see some other species around too. So the crab-eating fox, or Cedrocyon thorus, is also known as the wood fox, the forest dog, or the bush fox, is an extant species of medium-sized canid endemic to the central part of South America, and has been there since the Pleistocene. Like South American foxes, which are in the genus Lycomplex, they are not closely related to true foxes, And literally their name in Greek means fox dog, because they have both features that are fox-like and dog-like. So this was actually originally described in the genus Canis by Linnaeus, but then was put in the genus Ceratodon, Cedrocyon. And Cedrocyonia is a tribe within dogs that evolved in North America, and they became the furry scion became extinct about 1.4 million years ago. The genus has then persisted in South America for probably about 3 million years, and persisted in forms similar to this guy. And its actually closest relative is the short-haired dog, and there were other species of Cedrocyon around, but they've all gone extinct, so the crab-eating fox is really the only living member of the genus, which is a little bit tragic. So you can see how it looks. It's actually rather beautiful. So the crab-eating fox is predominantly greyish-brown, with areas of red on its face and legs, and black-tipped ears and tail. It has short, strong legs, and its tail is long and bushy. The head and body length averages about 64.3 centimeters or 25 inches, and has an average tail length of about 28.5 centimeters or about 11.2 inches. And it also can weigh between 10 and 17 pounds or about 4.5 to 7.7 kilograms. Let's see if we can spot another one running around. Are they all running? They're all sleeping. Of course they are. They're very cute. We'll have a look at different ones because they're all different colours. So their coat is short and thick, and colorations will vary from grey to brown to yellowish to pale and to dark grey. There are black streaks along the back legs, with a black stripe along the spine, and on the muzzle the ears and paws have a more reddish fur. The tail, legs, and ear tips are black, and the ears are wide and round. This torso is also somewhat narrower. Legs are short but strong. The dense, hairy tail stays upright when they are excited, and there is significant variation in colour between populations, from very dark to light grey yellow. So there is a lot of variety in these guys. So in terms of their habitats, they are a canid that ranges from savannas, woodlands, forests that are subtropical, tropical savannas, and they range from Colombia to southwestern Venezuela and in the north, and then to Paraguay, Uruguay, and Argentina in the south. So that's kind of how far their range goes. They've also been sighted in the Panama, and they've been sighted in the Panama since the 1990s. The habitat does include wooded riverbanks such as riparian forests, and in the rainy season they tend to move uphill, and drier times they tend to come more lowland. Their habitat covers pretty much everywhere except for rainforests, high mountains, and open grasslands. In some ranges, though, they are threatened with being extirpated or weeded out. So the crab-eared fox creates monogamic teams for hunting, so they are monogamous, and that sometimes includes groups of several monogamous pairs that may form during the reproductive season. Population densities of these species can range between one individual per 4 kilometers in Venezuela to 0.0003 individuals per kilometer in Argentinian wetlands. These guys, territorialism has been noticed during the dry season. Because during the dry season, or during raining seasons where there's more food, they tend to not worry too much about these territories. Hideouts and dens can often be found in bushes and in thick grasses, and there is typically multiple entrances to these holes, multiple entrance holes per den, so there's multiple ways to get into one den. And despite being capable of tunneling, they're a bit lazy and they prefer to take other animals' burrows. Several characteristic sounds they make that made by the crab-eating fox includes barking, or whirring and howling, which often occurs when pairs lose contact with one another. And these guys actually tend to be a nocturnal species with peak activity in the middle of the night and in the early morning. So that's quite interesting there too. Look at that wonderful one there. So in terms of reproduction, so these foxes, we'll have a look at the babies actually, because they are very, very, very cute. I do find them very, very cute. Where are they? That's an adult. There you go. Look at this little cutie. So these foxes reach sexual maturity within 9 to 10 months, and adult females can give birth to 1 or 2 litters per year, depending on the climate and food availability. The reproductive period most often begins in November or December, and then again in July. The birth of offspring follows an approximate 56-day gestation, which is typically in January, February, or even sometimes March, and then again either September, October. If giving birth to one litter, they typically give birth in the early spring. The breeding pair is monogamous and raises the pups together, and the pups are then weaned at about 3 months of age and then become independent from their parents at between 5 and 8 months of age. It's very, very cute. So their diet is quite interesting. The crab-eating fox, as you could guess, searches for crabs on muddy floodplains during the wet season, and that gives the animal its common name. It's an opportunist and an omnivore. So it prefers insect or meat from rodents and birds when available. Other foods readily consumed, though, is other crustaceans, tortoises, turtle eggs, bird eggs, insects, lizards, fruits, and carrion. Their diet is varied and has been found to differ by different researchers that suggest both opportunistic and geographical variation. Though during the wet season, the diet seems to consist of more crustaceans, while in the wet season it's more crustaceans, but during the dry season they eat more insects. The crab-eating fox contributes to the control of rodents and harmful insects, so they're quite good for pest control for farmers, so they quite like that. I want to have a look at you. There you go. We'll have a look at the white one. Beautiful, beautiful. You can see all the different variations in the coat. It's quite cool. But anyway, they are considered least concern. So there's no precise estimates on their population size, but they believe to be common within their range and their population stable. But they do face threats such as threat to livestock by farmers, so they're considered a threat. And they are sometimes illegally hunted, but their primary threat to the fox is actually diseases from unvaccinated dogs. So sometimes they can be impacted by unvaccinated dogs, spreading diseases to them. We have to say they are very, very cute. Another great one from Moonfox. Gotta say, Moonfox, you've done a wonderful job. So, last but certainly not least, we have got Great Cakes Mod again, who's given us the African Grey Parrot. So, gotta have a look at this guy. I might actually just quickly put this one a little bit more on the ground so they can use it. There we go. I want to look at you on the perch. Stop it. There we go. So this is the African Grey Parrot, or just known as the Grey Parrot. So the Grey Parrot, also known as the Congo Grey Parrot, is an African parrot in the family Psittacidae, and it was previously known as the African Grey Parrot until the Tanith Parrot was previously treated as a subspecies of this parrot, is now considered its own species. So, the Grey Parrot was formally described in 1758 by Carl Linnaeus in the 10th edition of Systemata Naturae. He placed it with the other parrots in the genus Psittacus, which was basically the name of, coined the name Psittacus itheranos, and they would put the location as Guinea, but that changed to Guyana in West Africa, and Psittacus is Latin for parrot, and Itherakus means basically unknown. It's for an unknown bird that was kind of said to mimic human sounds. So this species is monotypic, as no subspecies are accepted, with the Tanith parrot being now considered its own species. Even though there's previously all parrots were also in the genus Psittacus, but now the only animals in this genus are the grey parrot and the Tanith parrot. And there's the Clements checklist, which is a different checklist of keeping taxonomy of birds. It does have a couple subspecies, but I'm not sure how they're actually described. But anyway, we'll talk more about them. So the grey parrot is a medium to large size parrot, predominantly grey and black-billed, and they have a typical weight of about 400 grams, or about 14 ounces, and an approximate length of about 33 centimeters or 13 inches. And they also have a wingspan between 46 and 52 centimeters or 18 to 20 inches. The head to wings are generally darker than the body, and the head and body feathers have slight white edges, and the tail feathers are red. So both sexes are quite similar. There's not many marked sexual dimorphism. Juvenile coloration is quite similar to adults as well, but typically their eyes are dark grey to black rather than the yellow irises of the adults. And their undertail coverts are tinged with grey. And then adults can weigh between 418 to 526 grams, or 14 to 18 ounces. These guys can also live quite a long time in captivity. They can live for 40 to 60 years, although their mean lifespan in the wild is a lot shorter, probably about 23 years. And they start breeding at about 3 to 5 years of age, and they can lay 3 to 5 eggs per brood. So, the grey parrot is native to equatorial Africa, so it's found in places like Angola, Cameroon, Congo, Gabon, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Kenya, and Uganda. And they've also found in the Ivory Coast as well. Current population estimates range between 630,000 to 13 million birds, with populations decreasing worldwide, as the species tends to favour dense forests, but they can be found in forest edges and more open habitats such as gallery and savanna forests. A population study did show that there's areas where they've been virtually eliminated, as places like Ghana. So they've declined declined in Ghana between 90 and 99% since 1992. And they were found in only 10 out of 42 forested areas, and 3 roosts that's actually held between 700 and 1,200 birds in the 90s, now only held 18 birds. And local people mainly blame the pet trade and the felling of timber for these declines, though populations may be stable are thought to be stable in Cameroon. In the Congo, it's estimated about 15,000 are taken every year for the pet trade, and in the eastern part of the country, the annual quota is said to be about 5,000. So there's also a population that has been introduced potentially into Florida. They've escaped and been observed in South Florida since the 80s, but there's no evidence that they've been breeding naturally. So in terms of behavior, little is known about the behaviors and activities of these birds in the wild. It's additionally because of a lack of research, but also because they're a prey species, so they're hard to find because they're secretive and hard to observe. It has been shown, though, that wild grey parrots may actually imitate a wide variety of sounds they hear, much like captive grey parrots. And in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, there were 2 greys sound recorded while roosting in repeatedly had a repertoire of over 200 different calls that included 9 imitations of other wild birds and 1 of a bat. So they typically imitate even in the wild, which is quite cool. So in terms of feeding, grey parrots are mainly frugivores, with most of their diet consisting of fruits, nuts, and seeds, including oil palm fruits, and they do sometimes eat flowers and tree bark, as well as insects and snails. But in the wild, they partially become a ground feeder. Though breeding as well, we'll have a look at one of the babies. We've got to have a look at one of the babies. Let's see if we can find a baby. There was a baby. Very, very cute. Not a very different model, I don't think. Anyway, grey parrots are monogamous, and they nest in tree cavities. Each mated pair of parrots needs their own tree for their nest, and the hen lays 3 to 5 eggs, which she incubates for about 30 days, while being fed by her mate. The adults defend their nesting sites as well, so both of them are quite good parents, which is quite cool. I like that they eat with their hands, either with their feet. That's quite cool. Grey parrot chicks require feeding and care from the parents while on the nest. The parents will then take care of them for about 4 to 5 weeks after they fledge, and the young leave the nest about the age of 12 weeks. Little is known about the courtship behaviors of the species in the wild, and they weigh between 12 to 14 grams when hatching, and between 372 to 526 grams when they leave their parents. So that's basically 13 to 18 ounces once they leave their parents. So in terms of their conservation, they are predated. They do have a few natural predators such as palm nut vultures and a lot of species of raptors. Also, monkeys will target their eggs and the young for food, which is also quite tragic. Let's have a look at these guys as well. So humans are by far the largest threat for the species, though. So between 1994 and 2003, more than 359,000 grey parrots were traded in the international market. Approximately 21% of the wild population has been harvested every year, and mortality rates are extremely high between the time they are captured when they reach the markets. That can be 60 to 66%. The species is also hunted for meat and its body parts and is used in traditional medicines. And as a result of extensive harvest for wild birds and the addition of habitat loss, they are believed to undergo quite a rapid decline and are considered endangered. So they are listed by CITES as Appendix 1, so they do have the highest protections. And also the Kenyan government has held a short amnesty, which allowed grey parrot owners to actually go and get a permit for their parrots and then loan them legally. And then from this time, it's now illegal to own the species in Kenya without a permit. So part of the reason as well they're endangered, as I mentioned, they are quite a common captive bird. And there's a lot of stuff that they do in captivity, which is worth talking about here. So they're quite common in captivity and regularly kept as a companion parrot because of their ability to mimic human speech, which is often, that makes it very popular. And there's even an escaped one in Japan that actually was returned to its owner after it repeated the owner's name and address. So that's quite funny. So grey parrots in general are notorious for mimicking noises heard in their environment and use them tirelessly. They're highly intelligent, needing extensive behavioral and social enrichments in captivity, and as well as a lot of attention, or else they become distressed. With feather clucking, which is a stress thing, can be quite common amongst these parrots and affects up to 40% of captive individuals. And they may also be prone to behavioral problems due to their sensitive nature, with social isolation, does affect them too. So the grey parrot is a highly social species which relies on a flock-type structure even when raised in captivity. Because they are so dependent on other birds within their flock, most of their speech and vocal abilities acquired through interaction with the humans of which they live with. Both wild and captive parrots have been shown to use contact calls, which allows them to interact with their flock mates and communicate information about their location, predators, food availability, and their safety status. In addition, though, contact calls are used to form strong bonds with their flock mates, or in the case of captive greys, with the humans that live with them. In captivity, though, they've been shown to display communicative competence. So that means that's a very interesting thing that they've been able to demonstrate, which means that they're not only able to just use human language correctly, so they can associate the word with an object and understand what it means and not just repeat it. They understand what that word means. They can also use it in a way that is appropriate to the social situation they're in. So that's very cool. So that's like the beginning of being able to tell sentences and things. So they're very, very intelligent in that regard. So they're able to use a word and associate that and use that word correctly. Though in January 2024, there was actually keepers in a zoo in Lincolnshire Wildlife Park in England moved a notorious group of 8 swearing parrots into a group of more of 100 to dilute their excessive profane mimicry. So in terms of its diet, in captivity they may be fed bird pellets, but also a wide variety of fruits and vegetables, and things like, kale and pears and orange and banana and peas and green peas and beans and kale and stuff like that. But they also do need a source of calcium, which can be, supplements. In terms of disease, they can be susceptible in captivity to fungal infections, bacterial infections, nutritional insufficiencies, malignant tumors, Sitake, beaten feather disease, tapeworms, and blood wounds. And young parrots can be quite commonly infected by Sitake, beacon feather disease than adults. And when they get infected by this disease, they get a loss of appetite, fluffy feathers, sluggishness, and reduced walking abilities due to brittle bones. So grey parrots are more likely to have bronchitis, which is a inflammatory and infectious disease in their nasal cavity. Birds may exhibit signs such as wheezing, sneezing, nasal sniffing, and swelling, and inoculations of the ears. And treatment opportunities include gentle debridement and nasal irrigation as well. But what kind of, makes them so famous is their intelligence and cognition. So grey parrots are highly intelligent and are often considered one of the more intelligent species of parrots. Many individuals have been shown to perform tasks at cognitive levels similar to 4 or 6-year-old children's of humans, like the children's. It's quite funny. Experiments have shown that grey parrots can learn number sequences and can learn to associate human voices with the faces of the humans that created them. There's also been reported that grey parrots are capable of using existing English words to create new labels for objects that the bird does not have an object name for it. So examples of this that they've done, they've created baneri for banana and cherry for apple, banana crackers for dried banana chips, or yummy bread for cake. So they come up with their own names for objects that they don't already know the name for. So I think that's quite funny, and that shows they have a really interesting understanding of language, which is very interesting too. There was an American scientist, Irene Pepperberg's research. He had an Alex, who was a grey parrot, showed his ability to learn more than 100 words, differentiating between objects, colours, materials, and shapes. Pepperberg spent several decades working with Alex and wrote numerous scientific papers on experiments performed, indicating the bird's advanced cognitive abilities. One such study found that Alex had the ability to add numbers as well as had a zero-like concept, similar to that to apes and young children. And in addition to their striking cognitive abilities, they have displayed altruistic behavior. So researchers have actually found that while blue-headed macaws are unable to share a nut, with a member of their own species, grey parrots would actively give another grey parrot the nut, even if it means they would not be able to get one themselves. But when the roles would reverse, they were overwhelmingly likely to return the favour and foregoing their own nut in their partner's benefit. And this shows that they're not only selfless and altruistic, they also have reciprocity as well. Some other really cool studies as well, they have looked at different musical preferences for these guys. So when presented with the opportunity to choose between two different types of music via touchscreen, the two birds in the test actually repeatedly chose different songs in which they danced and sang along to them. And some pet grey parrots have been observed using, smart speakers to verbally repeat playback of specific favourite songs. So, things like Alexa, the parrot can go, Alexa, play this song, and then Alexa will play that song. And that often, mix up your Spotify algorithm and all that, which is quite funny. And what's very interesting as well, research actually suggests that foot preferences can be linked to the number of words a parrot may know and use. So researchers found grey parrots who prefer using their right foot shows a marked increase in the number of words within their lexicon compared to left-footed or left-handed parrots. And this postulates they may have lateralization of brain function, very much like mammals do. So, they're left-brained and right-brained. They also use the testimonies in parrots of two different murder trials. So they use this in consideration. They use the testimony as evidence during the parrot's witnessing, because they witness and they repeat the victim's last words. So one example of this was in 1993, there was the murder trial of Gary Joseph Rasp, who was a defendant accused of murdering Jane Gill, and public defender Charles O'Nulk, I don't even know how to say that, wanted to use Jane's pet grey parrot, Max, to prove Gary's innocence. Due to Max repeating Jane's last words, Richard, no, 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 so it would have proved her innocence, his innocence. And in 2017, the murder trial of Glenna Durham, the defendant who was accused of murdering her husband, Martin, the prosecutor was exploring the possibility of using the couple's pet parrot, Bud, as evidence of when Bud kept repeating Martin's last words, don't effing shoot. So that's quite interesting there. That shows, they could potentially be used, as ways to record evidence for murder trials. So I think that's really interesting as well. But there's also lots of mutations, there's lots of different varieties and stuff, because they've been captive bred for so long. They've been captive bred in places like South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and Scandinavia. They've been breeding them since the 1800s and bred different varieties in different colours. That can be probably red pigmented, but also they have a white tail and some are all white. So there's varieties you can get within captive parrots. But they have been around for much longer as well in captivity. They were also domesticated back in 2000 BCE. So they were native birds in the area, so there's lots of African grey parrots within the hieroglyphs of Egyptians, so that showed they potentially kept them around, because they made the sounds and they liked that. They were also considered valuable by Greeks and the Romans, who kept them in cages. And grey parrots, due to illegal trading in recent years, has been listed as endangered though. So yeah, it's another really cool species that we get to cover. Really, really awesome, Grey Cakes really giving us some cool birds. Grey Cakes is really just knocking it out the park with all these mods. I gotta say, it's really amazing. Grey Cakes is really single-handedly like a revolutionizing Planet Zoo. But yeah, really, really awesome, guys. I'm gonna have to leave it here, but we're gonna thank everyone. So, thank you, Jay Quadix for the humpback largemouth. Thank you, Lorby, for the black duck. Thank you, Sky Polaris, for the 2 zebra subspecies. Thank you, Moon Fox, for the crab-eating fox. And then thank you, Grey Cakes, for the Tawu and the African grey parrot. So yeah, really, really awesome. I really appreciate you guys making those for us. And yeah, I really, really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you guys like and subscribe, always remember to get the little bell icons to get notified about anything. So if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.